Welcome to the event, Attraction and Retention of International Expertise. This is a collaborative event with Idé and Science Park and the City of Lund, International Citizen Hub. And this afternoon, I'm going to have Sarah tell us a little bit about Idé and Science Park. Then I'll tell you a little bit about the hub before we get started with our event. Sarah, would you like to tell us a little bit about Idé and Science Park?
Yes, of course. Hi, Sarah Ingenius, and I am head of incubation program at the incubator here at Idé and Science Park. And we are a place and an organization that is Idé at large. We support companies from the first start of the Idé owners to the big corporations, all the way through. And I'm normally working in that first bit with the incubator and the pre-incubator. But we have more than 400 companies at Idé, employing more than 10,000 people. And since almost all of those companies are in the knowledge-based industries, we are heavily depending on attracting international talent to the companies. And Idé is working a lot with the international talent attraction and matchmaking between international talent and the companies in the science park and at the incubator. And I think that we're going to share in the chat channel a link to an event, for example, that we're running in December, where companies can meet international master students that if they need some special competences, and you can sign up there if you're interested. And basically, that's why we want to be part of this and arrange this, because we really believe that this is something that we need to do for our companies. And that's why it's so nice to be here with International Citizen Hub and Lund.
Oh, great. Thank you, Sarah. My name is Lisa Andersson. As you can see there, I work for the City of Lund for International Citizen Hub, which started in October 8th, 2015, actually. So I've been there for 6 years. That's when I started, basically. International Citizen Hub, for some of you that don't know about the hub, it's located by the city library here in Lund, a place called Exkahuset, 5-minute walk from the train station. And our job, or our privilege actually, is to take care of international competence, the spouses, the partners that come, the families that come here with the expertise that we recruit from outside of Sweden. And what we do there is we put on informative events. We put about 60 to 65 per year. And then we also run a job program where we help the spouses come into the job market, Swedish job market. And we have a drop-in service every Thursday. Missed it this morning, but we actually have gone live now with a limited amount. So between 9 and 12, people can come in and ask any kind of question and get help or redirected to where they can get answers. And we also run a homepage where you can find all the events and information about the area around you, and Facebook, LinkedIn. And we also put out a newsletter every month, comes around the 20th of the month. And there you get information of upcoming events, what's happening in the area, and little tips what you can do to make settling in a little bit easier for you. That's our role. But today our role here is to talk about attraction and retention. International Citizen Hub actually is retention, and is the retention place to keep the talent we recruit to ESS, one of our world-class research centers, and also Max 4 for the universities, and as we saw, an outcome for our companies around us as well, and now for the whole region. So this is a very hot topic for us. We work with retention, but we're looking at attraction and how we can help the area to attract international talent. So without further ado, we have Grundell from Key Relocation that is going to tell us a little bit about how it is to bring in this talent in the country, what to think about. It's not just to find the talent. Right now, we don't have the talent here. You want to bring it in, but how does it work? So Mikael, I'm going to hand the floor to you. And if you can guide us through that and give us some enlightenment, insight to how it works for some of us that don't know or a bit unsure.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to try to share a screen. So you let me know when you see it.
It's looking good. We just need a full screen.
It should be a red and blue
Yep.
greenish.
We see that, and we see your next slide as well. So,
Oh, which is fine.
okay.
I don't really know because it worked just when we tested.
I know.
We tested this 5 minutes ago, and it worked fine.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm Michael. I work for a company called Key Relocation, and we assist companies in the practical matters of bringing people into Sweden. Our goal is to have this process as simple as possible, so that everyone could, they can show up at work on Monday morning, and they know that their situation outside of work is either taken care of, or at least there's a roadmap, so that they know they will be okay. They will be legally full compliance. The family will be taken care of and in good shape. This just came out the other day, and I figured it would be a good start. Desperat jakt på competence. We don't have enough people in Sweden with the desired competence. We know this, especially in this company. It is a challenge. Obviously, we're looking outside of Sweden to cover all our needs. And when you do that, it is a little bit more complicated than just having someone from inside. What we're going to cover is basically the process and some pointers. And I want to start from the top and actually say what is not really my area of expertise. So let's assume that there's a recruitment process and that there's a job. Obviously, there is a need, and that is step one. What you need to consider when you identify the person, you don't identify the role. Sorry, you identify the role, and you start the process. You need to look into the tax situation. We're very good at taxes in Sweden. We like taxes quite a bit. So it is important to realize that everything you do could potentially have tax consequences, both for the individual and for the company. So when you do have something, run it by a tax consultant, step one, so that you don't run into something that could potentially be quite expensive. From the practical point of view, what you want to do is you want to decide beforehand what you want to offer your employee. You have a one-off. It's quite easy. You sit down and you make a package. You have two. That means you have a program. If you have a program, you need a policy that you could work out together with either us or one of our colleagues and competitors in the business. You can do it on your own, but the most important thing is that you have one and that you follow it. If you have a group, they will talk amongst themselves. They will compare packages and pays and everything. You can end up in a situation where there's an internal competition. You don't want to have that. Step one is to work out the policy. What do we want to offer our employees when they come? And this is from it's from pay, it's benefits, it's a housing situation, cars, everything, ability to go back home for visits, vacations, who's paying, all bits and pieces. When you have this, and this you do once and you follow it up, but you do it once, you do it initially. Once you have this, you can use this for the rest of your program. You should use it for the rest of your program. When you've done this, we arrive at the actual process. Step one, check the time frame. When do you want to have the SME on location? There's a couple of different things to consider. The most important one, is it a European SME or is it a non-European SME? If it's a non-European SME, you need to be aware of the migration process. It can take a long time. And there's basically one of two ways to do it. Either you do it by the book, as the migration board says, and you will get a work permit, or you do it in any other way, and there will be potentially very long delays. So when you reach this stage of the process, don't rush it. Speak to an expert. Double check, well, it's going to say more or less everything. There is a setup, a fast track system where you can work with a certain set of suppliers to have access to, it's not called the fast track system, but in essence, it's a fast track system for the migration board, where the provider assists you with the entire process from start to finish, with the paperwork, with all the ins and outs, and can also process the actual application. It speeds things up. If you do it within this fast track system, the entire process from absolute start to finish should be around 4 to 6 weeks, including everything. If you do it outside the fast track system, it can be up to 8 months, give or take, it sometimes even longer. But if you're eligible for the fast track system, speak to Lisa. She can help you with providers. We have the time frame set. We know we're in good time. Everything is on track. One thing that you want to look at initially as well, it's very handy to have the SME come here and start working. We often see that you overlook the family situation, if there is one, if there is a family, if it's a single. Obviously, this is outside. But if there is a family, when the family comes here as well, they are the most important people, to put it bluntly. The SME have an office to go to, work to do, business to attend to. They will be fine. With a family, potentially they will not. First questions could be as easy as asking them, do you really want to do this? Should you really do this? So that you don't end up in a situation you really want someone, you put all the resources into getting the SME here. The family follows reluctantly, and you end up in a situation where you have a premature ending because the family want to go back for numerous reasons. It could be anything from language barriers to intercultural differences, lots of different things. But keep this as a part of every initiation, that you want to have the family with you. Otherwise, it could be very difficult in the long run. I added the current challenges, which you also need to look into, at least for a little bit more time. And obviously, the most apparent one being travel restrictions. We do have the corona situation. It is difficult. Everything tends to take longer. It is difficult sometimes even to travel in your home country to, for instance, finalize immigration process. and could also be difficult to actually to travel to Sweden, either directly or a transit country. And it's a fluid situation. I think right now we're in a fairly good situation, and we see less restrictions. It's easier. But as everyone knows, it's a fluid situation. The border police will, in each and every case, take the final decision if someone is allowed into the country. And it is important to double check all the way up to the actual travel date. What is the latest information and the latest input? We've had people being stopped on well, sometimes questionable grounds, but at the end of the day, they will be stopped by the border. So double check all up until the day you actually travel. From a very much more practical point of view, let's say that they're actually here. What you would normally offer your employee could be anything from a really comprehensive package, including everything. I'm going to cover a little bit more basic. That is quite common, not only in Sweden. It's a fairly normal setup when you get an SME into your organization. Obviously, if it is a third country citizen, immigration services, absolutely vital. If you don't have a work permit, it's a no-show. Nothing will happen. They will not get in. So we come back to the time frame and everything. We already covered that. We're in good shape. We started this way ahead of time. When it comes to housing situation in general, it's always difficult. Sweden is no exception. On the contrary, it's probably one of the more difficult destinations. We don't really have a market that you see in most other countries where it's easy, quote unquote, to get a rental. It's much more regulated. It's much more difficult. It's a smaller market. This could come as a surprise. It doesn't really come as a surprise for us Swedes already here. It could come as a surprise for an SME, especially if you have one that's been on other locations before. They went to Mexico City. They saw 20 apartments in 2 days. They went to Shanghai. They saw 7 houses in a day. It'll be different coming to Sweden. It's a smaller market, but it's definitely something that I think should be included in a package. It is important for them to land somewhere. It's very difficult to come with a brand new Swedish personal identification number and get a rental contract. It's difficult and potentially expensive. We're going to skip a couple of the points and move to registration with local authorities. Also an absolute must to get the Swedish personal identification number. It's a fairly formal process. You need to be here. There is nothing you can do in advance. You need to be here because you're also being registered for tax reasons from the same day. So you physically go to the tax office, you fill in a bunch of papers, you hand them some, there's some copies of passports, offer of employment, there's a little bit of a list that a provider could compile for you. And everyone needs to be there. If it's a family coming, everyone needs to be there at one and the same time. And then the processing time starts. Normally, this is a process that takes a couple of weeks tops, and then you get your personal identification number. At this time, for many reasons, Corona could be one of them, but for many reasons at this time, the processing times at the tax office is considerably longer. Lisa, the latest numbers from Malmö, a couple of months.
It's up to 18 weeks, 20 weeks to get a personal number, and for
Voilà.
some, yeah.
So and Gothenburg and Stockholm, Skellefteå, some other key cities sees the same development. They're addressing this, but if you are looking to get SMEs onboarded, I would say up till the end of the year, this is one thing to consider. It takes extra time, and this it puts everything else on hold as well. The registration with Social Security takes longer. Getting a bank account takes longer. If you're American, it's even more difficult because banks are reluctant to give bank accounts to American citizens in the first place. It's also something to consider. Have them bring a Visa card for the first time, for the first period. But the registration with local authority is absolutely imperative. You need to have it. You need to have it done, and we're looking for the almighty personal identification number. When you arrive, when you're on location, what would normally be included, or I would suggest to be included as well, is some kind of language training. It's nice to be able to communicate at least on a basic level. It's difficult for them because they normally arrive in an international environment, so they will have English-speaking colleagues. And the Swedes love to practice their English. So it'll be difficult to have the Swedes, talk Swedish to them. So can they survive on English for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Yes, not a problem. Will the process of getting into the society as a whole be easier with Swedish? Also, yes. So I would suggest this as a part of any program. I would definitely suggest intercultural training, because we will have intercultural challenges. Lisa can vouch for this. You come as an American, you work in a Swedish company, in a Swedish environment. We do things differently. Yeah. We have flat organizations. We have a different approach to management. We have a different approach to many things. And it can be difficult. You can see a lot of frictions between a foreign manager, for instance, and a Swedish team, or the other way around. The intercultural training, it doesn't have to be much, but a couple of hours of orientation can save loads of headache, suffering, and money in the end. It's a very, very good investment. That would be, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, that would be a very brief overview of a normal package. This can be smaller. It could also be much, much bigger. But it gives you an idea of the things that from experience, I think is absolutely vital to have a successful move. One more picture, and that is the retention part. Both in Sweden, because you want to have them either for the duration or at least for the period of time you sign up for. But it might also be that you want to keep them in your organization in their next destination. If it's back home or if it's to another destination, they continue, they go somewhere else. But this is something that is frequently overlooked as well. Working both with the SME when they are on location, to be able to keep them for the entire time. I talked about the family situation. You don't want to end up in a situation where you attract someone, where you hire them and you take all the initial costs, and then they leave after 8 months and go back home for whatever reason. The family situation, as we mentioned, is the most common one. It's actually quite uncommon to go home beforehand because of failure at work. That's very uncommon. It is very common. It's not common to go back home. In the cases where you do go back home prematurely, it is the family situation, sorry. And also when you done this investment, because to a degree it is an investment as well, you had an SME here for 1 year, for 2 years, and they maybe go back to their home country, they go to a new destination, and hopefully continue to bring value to you as an organization. That's the picture. What frequently happens is that when the assignment is over, they are sent home or transferred to a local contract, a change of status, and they are not really taken care of. There are funds and money to spend when they arrive, but there is not much when they leave. So they will feel neglected. And it is actually quite common when you have someone go back to their home country, up to 60% within a 2-year period, up to 4 years, will leave the company. That's one. They will leave their partner and change their lives, or they will go to a new assignment somewhere else. At the end of the day, you as a company has lost the entire investment, and you lost a colleague. So when it comes to repatriation, please consider this as part of the package as well. Already from start, know that there is some kind of change coming. Either they go back home or they're being transferred to a local contract, but there is an end. Something will happen, and prepare both the organization but also the employee for this fact already from start, and you will see vastly increased retention rate in the long run.
Thank you, Mikael. I think you've given us an overview of what to think about when you're attracting, and we've come in a little bit into retention, which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about with the panel group. Do we have any questions for Mikael? Couldn't see anything coming in the chat, but as we are few here, I think we can have an open mic. We have one question. We have in the chat. Let me just take a quick peek. Is that with work permits, speeding up the work permit process for the talents that you want to bring? Mika, could you address this? Speeding up the work permit process. What do you have to think about here?
Well, basically, so the system set up in a way that there's a fast track system. And you have a few certified suppliers that can assist companies with the applications. And for this to happen, there's a 2-stage rocket where the supplier work with the company and register the company with the migration board. For this to happen, the migration board needs to see that there's a solid economy, that you can pay for the salary of the intended SME for a certain period of time. Preferably that the company is more than 12 months, has been registered more than 12 months. If it's not, there's ways to work around that, but preferably more than 12 months. And obviously the must-haves, you must be registered for VAT, must be registered as an employer, a couple of must-haves as well. The supplier will go through this list with you to set this up. You also need insurances. There's 4 different insurers. There's life, sick, income, and one more that I speak to Lisa.
Pension. Speak to me.
How can we find the suppliers? The question was how we can find the suppliers. Speak to Lisa.
Yes, yeah, you can always contact me for that. Great.
So that would be that would be the stage 1, and then we apply for the actual SME as well, which is also fairly is a very formal process. It needs to be advertised. You need to have an offer of work. It needs to be a certain pay level in level with union levels. Same thing. A small formal list. The supplier will help you to get everything correct and do the actual application. And when everything is correct, the turnaround time is a couple of weeks instead of these months.
Does anyone else have a question? I actually have one. While you're thinking, I will put this question to you, Mika. Are there certain countries that have more difficulty breaking through that barrier with a migration board when coming in? Companies should be aware of that there are more challenges when they're recruiting international expertise from particular countries.
Short answer, no. It's pretty much the same. To be honest, the process in Sweden compared on an international level is actually very straightforward. So it's much more difficult, for instance, to get a work permit in the US. It's amazingly much more difficult to get one in China. So from a process point of view, it's fairly straightforward. What could happen now, of course, is as I said, travel restrictions would make it more difficult for some countries that are not allowed. But hopefully that's temporary.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Mika before we move on to our panel? You may open up your mic if you have a question. No, we're okay. I can't see any open. All right then. Great. Thank you very much, Mika. You can't hear me, or maybe you can hear me. Thank you very much for your time. We've also put together a panel to address a few questions around this attraction and retention of international expertise. So I'd like to introduce the panel head. We have on the left-hand corner, my left-hand corner there, Louise Dolck Strömberg from Access Communications. We have a little below me, Jenny Olssson from Hansa Biopharma. And Mika will also join us with the panel. And with the panel, I wanted to put this question to the panel here. How important is it that international expertise recruited into Sweden are taken care of and helped through the settling process? How important is that? Louise, would you like to begin with that?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Lisa. And I think it's really important because when you had a need and if you find the right talent, it's a matter of time because we are many chasing this kind of talent people. But coming back, I think the most important thing is to be secure about the process. And we have an external expert, of course, in the relocation area because we didn't have that competence. So I think that's something that we wanted to do. The first we did was that, and I also hired a person from Migrationsverket because we didn't know anything and we saw that there was a lot of obstacles and we didn't want to go in there because this is a person and a family. It's a lot of responsibility. But to find this kind of talents, we all know that in this forum that it's really important. You can't stay with just people from Lund or Sweden. So it's a really important area. So you need a support, a professional support, I would say.
Professional support. Okay, great. Jenny, in your organization, you also, your organization recruits international talent, but not just outside. How do you handle also recruiting international talent?
I've sort of gone the easy way, Lisa. So I basically contact you. I think, as many have mentioned here before, Michael and Louise, etc., that it can be quite a complex situation, and there are many rules that you, as a company, might not know of. I would say that one of the advantages you have when hiring somebody who perhaps come as a partner, a company partner to somebody who has already obtained a job in Sweden, is that everything is so much easier, because that accompanying partner also already gets a work permit, a stay permit, etc., if I'm correctly informed. And that means that you as a company basically can employ that person the same way you would with any other Swedish person who is already in Sweden, etc. I find that when you start hiring international expertise, and you perhaps in the beginning you don't have a very wide network, then it's always good to use the networks out there. Like, for example, in my case, International Citizen Hub, because you already have a lot of contacts. So I sort of prefer to go that way and grow my network in that sense.
Great. It is a win-win when you have a family, as Mika had brought up, you have a family that comes in and you have the talent to be recruited to a company, and then you do have a spouse or partner, and it's very important to take care of that spouse and partner. So what do you do? And that's also competence that we don't always see. So it's very important to get that competence into the workplace that normally want to reach the Swedish job market as well and learn to navigate. What are some of the factors, Mika, you brought up some of the factors why people might want to leave, or that the families want to leave. But when coming in here into the country here, and you talked about intercultural training and language, what other factors do families need to look at, or the recruiter, or the company recruiting, what other factors do they need to look at besides the cultural training and the language? What should they look at when they're bringing in a family as well?
Well, one of the things, just what we just said, that it's more and more common to have a double income household for everyone. So that is actually one of the most important things, because the days when you had a male, predominantly male, SME coming in to do something, whatever, with they were called trailing spouses, which is a horrible term. Horrible. You don't want to be a trailing spouse. It just sounds horrible. So bring that up onto the table right away. Maybe there's something within your organization, because the partner is most likely nowadays working. They gave up a career back home. It could be that you have something in your organization. It could be that someone in your network is looking for someone. It's an excellent way to have a win-win-win situation for everyone. So that is very important, and I think luckily it's getting out there more and more. When I started, this was a non-issue 20 years ago. This was a non-issue. You had the male SME coming in because he wanted to fire something or downsize or whatever, and you had the trailing spouse. Maybe she could do something in the PTA or something, but otherwise she was stuck at home. It was not good. Today's situation is much better, and I'm happy to say that I think pretty much everywhere you see companies using this more and more. It's highly trained, highly motivated persons with an international outlook. What could possibly 1,000 things could go wrong, but it's a very good starting point when you want to hire someone. So ask Lisa. She has a lot of
Lisa doesn't have the answers to everything, but you can ask Jenny. You have some.
I'd just like to echo what Michael said there. That I have a team, for example, of 5 people, and almost all of them came as accompanying partners to somebody who had already obtained a job here in Sweden. They are highly educated. They bring a wealth of experience. They are super smart, and they have added so much value to our company. So I think that's very important to keep in mind, that the spouses that come along are just as valuable as, you know, the perhaps husband in these cases. So I would just like to sort of highlight that again.
So make that a part of the questionnaire. Ask, just ask, what do your partner do? Would they like a job?
That would make it much easier from the initial. That is a plus when you pay a lot of taxes here, and you know you probably will be a double income to already look at that the company thinks about that beforehand. Louise, Access Communication is a large company, and you recruit a lot of internationals, and you also send them out to different places. What is the value? I mean, you need to have that competence, that expertise, but what other value does an international bring to your organization, for example?
I think, as we heard before, is the vitalization. It's also a mirroring of all business, I will say. Our business is not only in Sweden, it's in 50 different other countries. So that's one part. And I was thinking about just bring with you the spouse, but I think we have a lot of employees that are single. So we have another thing. It's the onboarding process when you're starting to work at our company, that you have to have the networks, the community, because you are very lonely when you're entering Sweden and start a first job at Axis. So I was thinking about how important the onboarding process is to get your new networks inside the company. We are 2,500 in one address, and actually I think we are 50 different backgrounds and 40 different languages. So here is a good community, but I think sometimes we maybe should do this in a more structured way. We have the language training, but the intercultural training, I was thinking about that. So maybe that's something that we honestly need to do in the future for the integration part, to just for the retention as well.
Yeah.
I think otherwise you will leave as you do as an expatriate. You have 2 or 3 years, but we really need this kind of talent people, skilled people for a longer time for being sustainable in the recruitment process, in the investments we are doing. But they are so important because we can't look the same, all of us. It's a little bit boring as well.
Yes, exactly. That is something very interesting to bring up about singles. One forgets, though, that, you know, singles, they're at work and then they do go home. And what do they go home to? At least when you come as a family, you go home to your family. You have something to share because you're in the same boat. But it's something very interesting to take up as well that companies should think about, as a lot of the young talent coming are still single. When we talk about IT and engineers, newly graduated or with just a few years of experience, that's what we're seeing here. Well, Mika, do you also see now as a relocation company, there's some differences now from short-term contracts where maybe there were 2 years, 2 years, to local contracts? Has that changed in the past 10 years?
Yes, it has. Goes back to the policy point. So if there's a best practice now, it has changed from these IAs, international SMEs, the kind of described, you know, the male SME coming in doing something. He, because it was almost always a he, was an international SME. It was a very big package. Sky was the limit. Company paid for everything because it was vital to have this person here. These still exist. The packages still exist. International SMEs, long-term stays, can be called many things. What is more and more coming is local hires. Foreign local hires, local plus, same thing there. Different names for the same thing. But in essence, you have foreign SME or talent, but you offer them a local job. You offer them a local position with local pay, with local benefits, with local everything. It's only that they have a different last name and a little bit longer to travel first time. And before, when you had the IA, the long terms, you often saw them as a 2 year, 2+1 period, and then they were supposed to go home or go to the next destination. With the local hires, it's more common to at least you want them to stay. You want them to move here. You want them to be here for the duration. So whilst in some cases the language, for instance, is a nice to have option for the foreign local hires, maybe it's a must. Intercultural training, same thing. You have someone here in a management position who could do management things. Maybe they don't need, or at least they feel they don't need intercultural training to the same extent. But you have someone living here for a long time. It's important. It's more important because they're gonna, potentially spend the rest of their lives here. And again, I come back to the Swedes are weird, and one of the big problems is that we think we're not, but we are. So we think that everyone else should just adjust and realize how excellent we are. But it's us that's strange, and that is if you're bringing something from today when it comes to intercultural things, that should be it. We are weird. We think we're not, but we are. Lisa is nodding.
Yeah, I'm nodding because I'm still here after 30 years, still struggling with the ideas American and Swedes. We are so far apart in some ways. Jenny, I wanted to ask you a bit. You have hired these international, and they're women. We can actually say about 80% are women that come in and 20% men. It is changing. 5 years ago, when I started, it was the city of Lund. It was 90% women, 10% men. So it is changing, and it looks like it will be changing that number. But as you have these women who are part of your team now there, and international spouses, partners, do you see any other needs that they need? They have had some cultural training, but do you see other needs, or do you see any differences between them and the Swedish team?
Yeah, I would say that they need to have, well, how should I put it, a satisfactory everyday life. So they need to have outside of work interest. It is true that, compared to a single person, they will come home to a family, but that's not enough, because if you think about what their situation is back in their home countries, they don't just hang out with their husband and the kids. I mean, they have friends around them, they have family around them, and they don't have that here in Sweden. So they need to have the same sort of social security around them. They need to get to know new people. Doesn't necessarily have to be all Swedes. They can meet other expats as well, but they need to have new friends, make new friends. They need to be able to feel part of the Swedish society. Learn, how does the post office work? Well, we don't have post office in that sense anymore, but when you do go to the post office, wherever it's located, how does that work? How are the different processes working? They need help with that, so they will not always feel like a fish out of water. And I think that's really important to focus on their life outside of work. And I think that companies can do a lot here. Maybe they can order, I'm just making up examples as I go, but maybe they can, a company could, organize a historical trip, for example, in the city where they are living to explain to them a bit about that city's history. If the company doesn't have the possibility of doing that themselves, maybe they can hire somebody to do it for them, but just do something for their expat, their international expertise working for them, so that they will feel more at home in their new home country, I would say.
Great tips, great ideas there for the others. We've talked about how we can find service providers to help us to get those internationals in the country, what we should think about with their families, the role a company plays with that international recruitment, things that we can do, how we can make the spouses more comfortable, how we can get them into the job market perhaps, work with the competence that comes in, look at that invisible competence and make it visible. But if I put out to you, what do you think Sweden as a country should do to make an international feel welcome? What kind of things would you like Sweden to do for these internationals? Any ideas? One thing, Mika, give us one.
Two. First, yesterday, streamline the process of registering in Sweden because it puts people off, and it gives them a very bad start. And we see this more and more. So at this one point in time, Skatteverket needs to up their game, to put it bluntly. And we work a lot with computer consultants. Unfortunately, we've seen quite a bit of kompetensutvisningar, which I cannot get my head around how this is even possible. I'm just coming up with boring, sad things here, but that is one thing that really needs to change and stop right now, because we try so hard to get people in, and then 2 years after we kick them out for some weird reason which no one really understands, sometimes not even the migration board. It needs to stop right now.
Okay.
Apart from that,
I'm sure we have more from that, but yes.
Apart from that, something that you could do, you have an international member of your team, invite them to drinks. It's not a very Swedish thing to do, but invite them to drinks.
That's one thing I wanted, the next question you'd led into. How can internationals integrate with Swedes? That is a real challenge. Louise, Jenny, any ideas? How can internationals integrate with Swedes? Any tips?
Yeah, well, I think, in general, just be bold. I'm trying to think of myself, because I've been in that position where I have been an expat in another country, actually in various countries. I've lived and worked abroad, and you have to be bold. You have to have courage and just walk up to people and talk to them. I mean, you have the advantage here in Sweden that most people, they speak English. So take that chance and start a conversation. If they would not speak English, for example, there are a lot of these, in Swedish they're called språkcafé. So that's something that the library very often organizes, where you can actually go for free and have a conversation with a Swedish person, let's say an afternoon a week or something, just to practice your Swedish a bit. And that will help you to also, I think, integrate easier in society.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Louise?
Still on the first question you asked, what could we offer? And I'd like to say it with my experience is that we can also offer another kind of company culture, a more flat and not so hierarchical way. You could have a life, you could have a leisure, you could have a family, you could have friends, and you could still do your development. So I think that's something that I could see that we could bring to the person, to have this, fluffy life balance thing. But I really mean it. I think it could be a little bit different here in Sweden. We have a very liberal view of it. So I'm still at that question, I will say, about what could we bring into the person's life. And then we have all the sports, we have handball, we have everything. So that's also a community I think we should have a more contact with. And a student organization if you are younger, and so on. And then I think the company also should have some kind of helping out with different networks and communities within the company, if it's possible.
Great tips, great tips. Some things to think about after the pandemic and after work with your colleagues, but a real after work and enjoy yourselves. Or other activities, as you said, sports, maybe invite to your sport club. To start off with. Yes. It is very different in other countries in that respect. Before we get towards the end here, any questions? Let me see here in the chat, anything coming up? We have language cafes, EOS cafes, library cafes that have these language cafes to practice. Let's see here. Yes, we also have HIC with us, Helsingborg International Connections, that also have activities for some of these singles peoples as well. So it's to spread yourself out in the region, to go to different places. Good to discover different towns and cities as well. I'm thinking we're going to coming to the end here. And before I thank you, I just wanted to bring up that when we're looking at attraction and retention of international expertise, we're not just looking at someone doing something for the company. We're looking at a person contributing and growing and developing with the company, with their colleagues, and developing themselves. And many times, maybe not directly at Access all the time, because you have more singles perhaps at recruitment there, but a lot of families come and their children come. And that's not just talent, but also another mindset to think about. And I will just tell you on a personal note that when I first came here, I knew Sweden was very different when I visited, and I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be here 30 years plus. I come from California, had a great life there, and my idea was going to Italy where the sun was. But I'm still here, so there must be something very good about Sweden. And there is. There's a lot to say about Sweden, and we do pay high taxes here, but we do get something for it. And I want to leave you with that note today, that today, we didn't get a lot of questions from the audience, but you're welcome to send your questions in. We are going to send a form out with some feedback. We're interested in hearing what you have to say, what your thoughts are. And if you'd like to hear more about this, we just touched on the basis of attraction and retention. There's so many more things to look at in depth. And Mika just brought up an outline of what you should think about as a company when hiring, but there's so much more to it than just that. So I'd like to leave you today and say thank you to Mika Grundell for sharing that overview of what we should think about as a company and how we should treat international to think about for the recruitment and keep that recruitment. Louise, thank you so much for sharing your experience in a large organization as you come from and what is happening there and the aspect of singles that we forget sometimes. And Jenny, thank you so much for sharing your journey of how you also contribute to making the invisible talent visible, the spouses, putting them out in the job market and let them flourish as well. And we'd like to thank Sara Idean Science Park. Thank you for having us here and sharing this day with us, and from the City of Lund International Citizen Hub. And we wish you all well and happy recruiting. And if there's anything, please get in touch with me at International Citizen Hub, Key Relocation. I'm sure Louise at Access sends some things over there. You might have some tips for her, for the singles, and Jenny, absolutely. She's always looking for talent as well. So have a wonderful afternoon and take care. And please let us know what you think and fill in that feedback. Always curious to hear what you have to say. Have a great afternoon. Bye.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.